Welcome, everyone. Today we have Nellie returning to join us. How are you, Nellie?
Good, thanks, Gabby.
It's so good to have you back. So, for those who haven't seen Nellie before, Nellie's a survivor of SRA, of MK Ultra, and experimentation. She was born into a generational family, and Nellie has been recounting the many, many memories that she has been able to process and reintegrate. And she's really been giving us just a year by year overview of the programming that is used to create a mind control slave. So she's speaking out today to raise awareness and to support other survivors who are beginning to remember. And so we can all identify the signs of children in our communities that might be going through these horrific projects at this time. And I know some of these truths are hard to hear, but I feel, Nellie, you're such a shining example of, what is possible through healing and, taking this, horrific trauma and creating goodness from it. And I think it's so important that these topics are being discussed publicly, and survivors are realizing for the first time that they are not alone, that there's hope and there's healing out there for us. So I thank you so much for all you do to prepare for these sessions and the many truths you're bringing through. And I know today we're going to be talking about the programming throughout your 16 years. In particular, we're going to start with just how the knowledge of women and the knowledge of people that knew how to use plants, knew how to heal, was really taken away, and that weakened society so much, and really allowed these nefarious groups and cults and institutions like the Roman Catholic Church to come in and control society. So I think that's such an interesting topic and so relevant to these times as well.
Well, thanks, Gabby. Yes, today I'm going to be starting with talking about the history of the witch and the plant knowledge that was taken off the midwives and healers and some elders, primarily women, and then the formation of the Illuminati, also seeing things under drugging, and doing the work to be able to separate that out, the hallucinations that come from these plants that were used primarily for healing and midwifery by the women, but then taken into the wrong hands, rogue people. And also to clarify that survivors have, some of them still need to separate that out with the hallucinations and do a little bit more work, but to have patience and to let them do that in their own time. Not everyone is up to that stage with this, and just to take it easy on survivors that are coming out with different things that might be quite hard for people to comprehend. And also I'm going to be talking about some signs to be aware of when we're targeted under these criminal organizations that can come through, especially going to be focusing on children, a lot of signs. I'm going to be talking about a little bit about my mental health and medication that I'm taking now, as well as adverse negative experiences with other medication that was forced upon me. And also the way that I am trying now to embrace nature, especially putting good things into my body, not toxic things that zombie you out and control you, and just, that's quite horrific. So my negative experience with that. And also my wellness and healing, to start with, to end with, is quite important, especially for new survivors that are coming through, to show that, it is, you can do it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And you're such a brilliant example of that through, having a wonderful daily routine of self-care. You can support yourself and, look at what you're able to do now in terms of helping other survivors and creating goodness. So it's awesome.
Well, there's platforms like you have that have enabled me to have that as well. Like being able to speak out really does help you be able to have a life outside of this and find a purpose, even reclaim some type of spirituality that was taken from us from such an early age, and just constantly brought into negative experiences with that. So that's really important as well. So I've had a bit of time off, had a recent stalking as well, which opened up a new vault, which doesn't help. Always when you think there's nothing more, you always hope there's nothing more. Boom, there's another one. And this was opened up by a stalker about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Man in black, in my new neighborhood, just to let me know that, yeah, they're still around, as they always will be. I still have to take precautions. You can do that. I have many means to be able to do that now, and 50 years of experience to know how they work. It's really important to be able to be super alert all the time, and certain medications won't allow that. And also, I am now taking an antidepressant and have for a while, and that was a big step to be able to do, because after what we've been through, we often think, why do we deserve to have any joy after seeing so much death? Like, that is something huge to work through, and you know that you need some help, because waking up to this every day is just there's no words. In order to get you through, sometimes it's good to take some type of medication that I just think I might need it for a while. But to get to that point, I went a couple of years of really needing it, but denying myself that, because I had this thought process inside of me that, why should I deserve to have any happiness when I witnessed so much death? And that was a huge thing to work through. And it was pretty much touch and go to get there, because, yeah, it was pretty chronic, the flashbacks and memories constantly. But to be able to work through that, in order to keep going with this and keep speaking out, you do have to have those moments of joy and happiness and relaxation in nature. It's so important for your wellness. Even sitting in my backyard now, it's taken me a long time to be able to do that, because of all the control and stalkings and everything that was around me for so long. So that's one thing that I've been reclaiming, as well as a few that I'll talk about at the end. Yeah.
Amazing.
So yeah, I was awakened with a new flashback, or a couple of them, that have left me in limbo. It started with a hum that I started to automatically do out of nowhere. And as a survivor of monarch training, one thing that they do with us, unless we're Hollywood, is with the target of the ears and everything, we don't sing, we don't hum, any of that. So the hum took me, it was awful. Like, it was an awful feeling. It just happened automatically. And I just felt sick when I was doing it, wondered where it came from. Then a couple of people in my life sent me messages. This is how they work. They will get people to open up a new vault as well, through things that they say that I have past triggers. And so then I was just, boom, straight back into a flashback that happened when I was 10, as well as another one with things that were recently acknowledged in the papers and the media that I went to after that all happened. I thought, well, there's something happening here. And there it was, straight back to 10, where one of the handlers did the same hum to me before I was taken away to a place where other boys were, unfortunately, and it was to do with pedophilia. So it was quite an awful thing, and it hasn't ended. I don't have an ending with it, so I'm left in limbo. So that's kind of like, it's not a great feeling at the moment, but You just have to keep going one step at a time.
Yeah. And that's
So
the
that's
thing
been
with
happening.
memories coming through, isn't it? You just don't know how much more there is to come through. And that's a really good example of audio memory. So like the actual sounds coming through first before everything else starts to collect for you as well, with that hum, and obviously it being programmed in before. So yeah, your memories can come through in so many different parts.
Yeah, and when the hum happened with the man coming towards me, he did the same hum when I was 9 or 10 years old and said certain things before I was turned around and then turned around and taken back. It was like a feeling inside of me at that age. When I saw him, it was all straight away a huge anxiety. Oh no, it's one of them. And then when he did the hum, part of me said, oh, it's going to be okay. He's going to sing with me. It's going to be different this time. And then it wasn't. It was straight into the horror. Yeah. And the automatic, like my body started to move automatically as I was
Going into that shock.
towards a shed where they were telling me that they were making pedophiles, and also had people that were just out of jail that were pedophiles anyway, because they're right through the jail system.
Yeah.
So they're doing both, existing ones and new ones. These are what I'm trying to talk about, as these are the triggers that we get that are set up from a very early age. And they can come, like in my instance, it's now 45 years later almost. Yeah.
Wow. I'm so sorry to hear it's been so
through.
unsettling over the last month for you with all that coming through. And you're so courageous and brave to just, keep walking forward one step at a time, and keep sharing your story and keep working on your healing. We're so proud of everything that you're doing, Nellie.
Yeah, that's all we can do. And I hope to present as well as I can to give other survivors hope.
Yeah.
That we can live a life after this. We have to get through the guilt and the shame that we are still alive when so many aren't. But we can be a voice for them. Another thing they told me quite early on was that the crow / raven was my totem, and that was to do with messages from the dead. That was another job that they had for me, amongst my many other jobs that they set up for me through my life that I'll get to later. Yeah. So I'm going to be starting with talking about the history of the witch, the midwives, healers, and some elders, primarily women, who held all the plant knowledge. And some of them back then, and this is like the 14th and 15th century, but it does go back to about 1280, the first witch torture trials. And they really took off France and Switzerland around that time. And then the brunt of it went to Germany. And I was also taken on the pretext of a study tour in 2012 and taken to Bavaria from Germany, as well as seeing all the train tracks in Germany that I was taken to as well, to do with the Holocaust and all of that as part of the history. So they're taking me to things like that. And also in one of the art galleries, I think it was MoMA, Museum of Modern Art, the Book of the Dead, I was taken to that. There was a handler there as well. So they were bringing all this history into me for knowledge. And where I was taken to in Bavaria, which I'll get to later, there was a mass killing a few years ago there with people dressed up as witches. So that was all to do, because they can plan anything like this. So I was taken to that and pointed out the hotel that would happen a few years later before that happened. So it's all quite crazy. So back then they used, because everyone used to gather, and it was quite religious times, churches were the main gathering. So they used a lot of the priests back then to round up, and other people to round up a lot of the witches. controlled by other people, other organizations to do this. So this was all a setup. And it was a mass killing of women that held this plant knowledge because they wanted to take that and get it into their own hands.
Exactly.
And the women had all this. They were the botanical women. They knew everything about the plants. And I'm talking about even things like henbane, hemlock, Atropa belladonna, things that can create these hallucinations. And back then, a lot of people used to say, oh, my neighbour, I saw them flying on a broomstick, and all these kind of things were said through the hallucinations that were caused by these plants. And this whole notion of the witch came through, and the rounding up of so many women primarily to do the mass killings of them so that they would never be able to speak about their knowledge. And this knowledge went, well, this, you know, the Illuminati stemmed from this, and this knowledge went in eventually to the psychiatry of the time that was set up, the men in white coats. About this time, I think the Illuminati was formed in the late 1700s. Back in the witch torture trials, they started in France and Switzerland mainly, and my mother used to make a lot of reference to me that she was from France, and then my father alluded that some of my DNA came from Switzerland. So that's where that sort of all started. And as you know, I've spoken about this in past sessions, that I was named the witch. You know, I had many witch names from about the age of 3. And I was always cast as the witch as well as the Jew in this organisation. So that was happening right through my life. Yeah.
And that whole label of witch is just such a way to tie children, and even in, you know, society today through the occult, just tying people in to these occult practices and sorcery, when the truth of that story is, which I think you recounted beautifully, is, you know, these were wise women, these were healers in the community. They weren't the witches. The witches were the sorcerers within the Roman Catholic Church and other groups that wanted to completely take that knowledge out of society, and then they controlled it. And we can see that through things like, you know, the pharmaceutical industry. So pharmakia is the Greek word for sorcery, but it's also for spells, and it's the same word that's used for the medication industry. So it's so sad that all that beautiful knowledge of plants and what they can do for us was weaponized.
It's not the plant's fault either. Like when I started doing a lot of artwork about the botanicals, which was programmed as well to start with, I used to draw the plants in a anti-clockwise format going around the board as a reparation, because it's not the plant's fault, it's the people that use them for ill that, that's the main problem that we have. So a lot of the women were killed, and how that was set up, the main gathering, as I said, was the church and the religious organisation. The priests were controlling that, a lot of the witch hunts back then. So they were doing the work of these organisations back then that's formed into the Illuminati and took all this knowledge, and it was a secret society. So they covered a lot of the knowledge up for a long time. And then it came out a lot through World War II. There was the pretext of rounding up the Jews because they hated Jews, but they wanted to do mass experiments with a lot of things, shock machines and all these botanicals on people. And these camps were often a huge experimentation, as we know, for mass amounts of people, millions of people.
Yeah.
Twins, all sorts of experiments, things without anesthetics. It's absolutely just the dehumanization is just abhorrent.
Yeah.
So, and then as we know, it went into the OSS, or this knowledge, and then through the CIA that got formed, and straight out into other little hubs of psychiatry that went all over, where more experiments happened on a lot of women, a lot of hysterical labelled women, and this is from a lot of the plants like a belladonna and things like that were used to make, and that can make people hysterical. And there was a whole wave of hysteria in the asylums, people put in there, locked up, even for little things like if someone wanted the will and had to get rid of the sister, they would make sure that they were, you know, told that they were mad, and they would lock them up. So all sorts of hideous things were happening back then to lock people up. And also a lot of people with disabilities were locked up in these asylums, and further experiments happened. And then later it was things like Ewan Cameron, who had my mother under him, and all these things happened. So it's a little bit of the history and how it eventuated and evolved.
God, it's just incredible thinking that, you know, all of these groups were just so obsessed with, you mentioned being taken to where they were holding the Egyptian Book of the Dead, or a copy of it. You know, that book's thousands and thousands of years old, before Christ even. And, you know, they've went back and taken that knowledge, which was really about creating a mind control slave through the same things, through torture, through druggings, through demonic possession, and they've just weaponized it into the mind control that we see today. It's just such a long thread. And obviously all the plants that they took from these wise women and used them nefariously against the population as well. And it's still happening.
And also all the recordings of all the witch torture trials that they used, and became things like, I was programmed under the most brutal, which was monarch programming. And some of my main programs that I was told of in 1997 were MK Naomi, Project Search, Bluebird, Artichoke, amongst many others. So we have the most brutal of the programming, including the trafficking, including all the torture. And most of these tortures that they found were from the witch torture trials and recordings of that they kept. That's how it happened.
Isn't it?
That's what I was told.
Yeah.
That's a brief history, very, very brief, very simplistic, but yeah, that's
good overview.
That's an overview of it. And it's good to have that bird's eye view in a way. It's horrendous, but yeah. And yeah, there's just so much trauma now, as we know, and then people get a diagnosis of a mental illness when there's no fundamental foundation for these assumptions. All people need is community and love and a life purpose to get back on track. But they're just given a pill and
a label,
thrown in a corner and isolated. And they did all that to me as well. They isolated me from family, friends. All friendship groups were set up for a while, then taken away from me, and another one and another one. Yeah, it's abhorrent. Yeah, so it's funny that it's called World War One and World War Two, and it wasn't, because there was the Great War before that that happened. So it wasn't the first World Wars. And many other little wars happened. Yeah. But it's funny how it was World War One and World War Two when so many wars had happened before that. And with World War II, well, Hitler was the fanatic of that, but he was also controlled too, and had many other people around him. Yeah. And they all escaped, and they went to places like South America. Okay, yeah. Not only America and Russia, but South America, Australia, as far away as New Zealand, I know. The end of the world, where they gathered and did the most horrendous stuff from the safety of New Zealand that no one would suspect, and also new had a connotation with New World Order, and Zealand, a Z, Zodiac. Well, of course. All part of that as well. So it was all planned. And this is what they do. They have so many connotations with everything that I was told. So the real ones got away from it and kept going.
Yeah, some patsies took the fall, right, from the Nuremberg trials. All the big names managed to get relocated. Again, just such a show.
Yeah, so it never really ended. It just simply went covert. Yeah. And still exists today in plain sight. basically, in plain sight, but no one seems to be able to see it because they're so devious. Yeah. So I've always felt like I was in a virtual Holocaust from birth, because a lot that happened to me happened in those camps. A lot of things that they did to me that already done to a lot of people in the camps. Even giving me diseases, sexual diseases that I'll get to soon when I talk about the trafficking, all sorts of things were done. And I had to survive that. We have to survive that when we're in these programs. And it's constant. It's every time you're woken up to something. And they see how long you'll go, how long you'll survive these things. If you live, and they'll take you to the brink of death, and you have to get through that. It's really, really brutal. And they laugh and they mock everything about humanity, and everything's been steadily planned.
Yeah.
Centuries ahead now, I've been told. Centuries ahead. Including the building of all these nuclear submarines that they're doing now. Multi-billions of dollars worth, because they will just get unwitting people to build these huge things that will destroy humanity, because it won't be the government and military that will be controlling them. It'll be these organizations, but they always get other people to do the work for them. Yeah, they'll program them to do that, and that's happening right now. And in 2011, my father spoke to me about the man from Atlantis when I stood, and he had the script that he was reading from, and he said, "You remember the man from Atlantis? You watched that series when you were younger?" And I remember nodding, saying yes. And he was saying, "Well, we all have web fingers and web toes." And I was thinking, no, you don't. You don't. Pathetic. But he was saying that we building things under the sea, places to be under the sea. And as we know, when these nuclear things happen, which is going to decimate the world, many, many people, they will be under the sea where it's safe. So that's what they were referring to, calling themselves reptilians, things like that. And disappearing under the sea while all this happens, and then they'll come out and most of humanity be wiped out, and that's the way they're going to clean the slate and begin again their way, with more and more controlled slaves and breeders for people that they want to be in their military type establishments from then on, controlled birth, all of that. So they've really taken all the knowledge and power out of the midwives and the healers, and going into this type of life, change of humanity. So yeah, and my father also said with delight that they were going to be causing a lot more economic recession, which we see now. It's back in 2011 from his statements. Homelessness, more small wars happening all the time, trickery to do that, getting control of people that will suddenly, be programmed to fire a missile at another place, and then it's all on. This is what they do. Mass killings, famine, more destruction, basically. And when I mentioned, I think last session, that I saw a blue-green putty that was referencing the underworld, where they're going to be when all this happens, and then emerge after that, like reptilians. But they're not reptilians. They don't exist. I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the thing. A lot of people believe all this because people say that they see it and really believe that, but they just haven't done the work yet to separate out from reality through the hallucinations that really make you see this. And that's something that I had to do, because my father, as you know, in past sessions, he wore the devil's mask. I was under LSD and other cocktails. went through to see my mother afterwards, saying I saw the devil was on me, ripping out my soul, everything that he was saying and that was happening. Later on in 2011-12, it was aliens,
Mm.
the LSD as well. And I really had to do a lot of work to separate that out from reality. And it does take a lot of work because it is so real and you are feeling that at the time and seeing that at the time, and it is so scary. But this is some of the tactics that they use when they target you.
It's so true. And that alien programming is so prominent in survivors. You know, there's so many survivors that I speak to that have unpacked that and realized what they've went through. And
Yeah.
the reptilian idea is really an extension of that. There is, I mean, as survivors, like I think we've all seen instances of people, you know, shape-shifting and different things going on. But, you know, in truth, that is the demonic forces that are behind satanic ritual abuse. It's not a biological alien or, you know, a solid 3D entity that is in the room. This is, you know, this is what black magic and spell casting does. So I think that's a really important point, Nellie, is just we need to break down, because programming is a lie. So, you know, what you first are shown is the lie, and then you need to break it down and find out what is the underlying truth of that, which you do so well.
And also UFOs too were used as a decoy from what they were really doing. The propulsion scientists as well would set all these things up for something for people to believe in as a decoy for other things that they were doing. It's all a decoy away from what's really going on as well. And a lot of it comes from the 1800 sci-fi books that were written, a lot of things about vampires as well, all sorts of things. And people enjoyed that fantasy, but then a lot of people started to think this could be real and wanted things like that to be real in a way. They like that idea, something to talk about, something to have conversations about, something to believe in when people were grasping at straws about what to believe in and things like that. So that was also happening way back then. So that's like a decoy. And your mind really has to separate this out. Yeah. So my father said to me in 2011 that World War III would happen in my lifetime.
I think we're seeing that now, aren't we?
Yeah. And I would still be alive for it. Definitely, yeah. I'm just now going to read some signs that people can perhaps recognize, but it is difficult when you have a target and that target is surrounded by people that are also under scopolamine. Like this organization has said to me multiple times that they leave no stone unturned, that everything is meticulously done and everything is seamless. So, but I will still read these out and we'll be speaking about more later on. So I was termed a sleeper. For those that don't know what that means, means that I was put to sleep a lot under programming, so they term us sleepers. And it also had other connotations with the railroad, sleepers on the tracks. Also connotations with that to do with the Holocaust as well, but they would often put us on train tracks, only letting us up just before the train almost got us. And I also witnessed that done to other children as well. It's a threat and a control, coercion, as well as that, which is what they work on. And we also drop off to sleep a lot when we're out. So that's a sign in the classrooms. Well, some days we might be ultra alert, automatic, robotic-like. Other times we just, it depends how long you've gone with the programming, fall asleep in class. I would often be programmed to ride a bike. and crash into blue cars. It was always blue cars that I would crash into the back of. In the timing of the drugging, I'd be riding my bike if my father instructed me to. This is after the age of 8. It was a blue bike as well. And my second bike after that was also blue. And I would be starting to struggle, falling asleep, and then I'd see the blue car and I'd just run straight into it like a trigger response. And they also do this with many other people, as we're seeing in the media lately. I can recognize it, that some truck driver suddenly ran into, with seeing a sign, straight across 2 lanes and into a whole lot of other vehicles and police and people. So they can orchestrate this to happen as well with their mind control, with signals and signs and programming. Clumsiness is another one. I remember caring for other children and knowing that they could catch a ball really well. And all of a sudden, after a couple of times with this, they were dropping the ball all the time. Drop the ball. So this is after shock treatment. You just don't have those skills. Coordination, things like that. You're quite clumsy. Also what they did with my ears, and I witnessed this in other children as well. You fall over a lot. They will also do something like make you wear shoes, obviously 2 or 3 sizes big, as an excuse as why you are falling over. So this is another sign, which can also be said, well, the family isn't that well to do. So giving you the, this is the poverty programming as well, which is also a cover-up. So people will think, well, they're tripping over because their shoes are too big and the family can't afford them. And you're tripping over because of the electric shocks. I always had like a permanent egg somewhere on my head from completely falling and landing on your head, because you just don't have the ability to put your arm out even under those situations and break the fall. So those things would happen. So falling over a lot. And also tinnitus can cause a lot of brain damage, which is another reason why they attack the ears, because with all the tinnitus, there's recent studies that I found the other day that it can actually cause brain damage.
Wow.
Yeah.
Tinnitus is like the ringing in the ear.
Ringing.
And I guess with the ear being punctured, bacteria and, you know, all sorts of things could go into that area.
You get tinnitus from the electric shocks that you're put under, the huge electric shocks, as well as all the ear damage that they do from a very young age and then frequently throughout your life, which is one of the worst pains in the world. You feel like putting your head through a wall when this happens. Another thing is cleaning a spot. I would often walk into a situation where someone was out and there was all the handlers around us, and that person was cleaning a spot on a surfboard over and over and over again. And I'm thinking, and telling me about it as I'm walking into the house. And I'm thinking, this is really weird. Maybe I'll just go and get my children and get out of here. But by then you're just surrounded. Also go to other people's houses where they might be cleaning a certain spot on a tile or a wall over and over and over again, like just fully focused.
It's a bit of obsessive behavior kind of thing, like an OCD response. Yeah.
That they will just get that person to do that over and over, that repetitive behavior, and they can do it for hours.
Wow.
Under programming, while they do other things around them. And also with children, they can become focused on one thing, which can also be masked as autism. I remember one child went out to a back fence and started yelling out, "Shut up," repeatedly under programming. And I was thinking, what is that child listening to? And all of a sudden I could hear in the distance a cicada. So they were triggered by the cicada in the distance and would stand at the fence repeatedly yelling out, "Shut up," for about half an hour. It's like bizarre behavior like that. But normally everyone surrounding that child is under, as I was. You're not able to hold a chain of thought. No imagination as well, like when you've got the thought control, and it's a string of thoughts that they put into you, it's all timed. You don't have any imagination. There might be the golden child around you that can be programmed to show imagination, but as different delta and beta slaves, we don't have that imagination. I can remember my father in my room when I was about 7 or 8 telling me that I was going to write a story about Jewel and Frog. Jewel as in Jewel.
Yeah.
But when I got to school, I wasn't able to. And I remember the nun that was teaching me just said, "Don't worry about it." Because when I got there, and up to that point, I'd been programmed to be able to write a lot of stories. And then they took that away from me to always show me that they had the control. And it was an awful feeling that I sat there and I really wanted to write this big story about Jewel and Frog that was programmed in me by my father the night before or nights before. And I wasn't able, nothing came out. So there was nothing. Yeah. So they'll do things like that. He also said he was going to put me with multiple frogs in my life as partners. And those kind of threats as well, and all that kind of allusion to fairy tales that they use and twist them against you and make them into a horror.
It's scary just thinking of all the things that have been used as programming the children, right? The fairy tales, the children's books. It's just so thick, all of this programming that has been unleashed on, young minds.
That's right. Also, we don't have dreams at all, especially under scopolamine and the cocktails of drugs that we put under in the programming. You go to sleep and then you wake up like that, and there's nothing in between when you wake up. And one thing they do is they will always rush you into a new event or a new thing, and you have to do things very quickly. You have to get on top of things very quickly. But I was often aware that I had never had dreams, and often children will say, if you ask them, "What are your dreams like?" they will just say automatically, "I don't have dreams," as well. And they'll even say it in that monotone voice. Also, you're not entering any natural sleep cycle with to do with beta waves, things like that that can enable you to have dreams. You don't have all of that. Everything is artificial. All the drugging in your body, everything cancels that out.
And no doubt all the broken sleep as well, right? Like you're just not having the normal overnight unbroken sleep to even develop patterns, besides the druggings, because you're constantly being used and taken to things overnight as well. So
extreme sleep deprivation all the time. Yeah, all the time. And if you feel like you've got energy, it's things like amphetamines and other cocktails of drugs that are making you perform what they want you to perform with some energy.
Wow.
No singing. Voice can suddenly drop, especially the age 4 or 5. They will often do the leucotomy age 4 before a child is taken to preschool, or age 5 before they go to school, so that no one sees a change in them. And the voice will drop to like a drone level.
Wow.
The child may have previously been programmed to sing in a lovely voice, as my mother heard one of my brothers sing, and all of a sudden overnight the voice drops. And I've seen that with other children as well. And it's just heartbreaking, the knowledge that that's been done to the child. And often mothers are forced to watch that as well. So they're forced to watch. And when you go down from shock and horror, you're propped up again and forced to watch, keep watching while they're doing that.
Horrific.
To a child, taking their brain, emotions, flattening effect, all of that, changing them.
So awful.
Also, children will often have frequent nosebleeds from all the tubing that's shoved down their nasal passages. I used to have them. I know of other children that had them, and often two children at once will have a nosebleed as soon as they get up, within a minute of each other, both of them at the same time. And I witnessed that quite often. Both children would have a nosebleed at the same time, virtually within a minute of each other. So that's another sign.
And I imagine the swelling of the brain just with all of these operations being done would lead to the nosebleeds as well, being so prominent.
And often I used to see children with massive blue veins that might go across their neck from all the pressure from the electric shocks and everything, and the drugging and the coercion and the torture, what they were doing with them, vices on the head, things like that, will cause big blue veins to be really prominent. Children will often be quite pale because of the lack of sunlight, not often having much time in the sun. For instance, my twin brother always had a different skin tone to me. He was quite dark compared to me because he had an outside life, whereas I didn't. I was very pale most of my life, from lack of sunlight and vitamin D. I'll talk about some sexual stuff now. I know that when I was about age 2, 3, and 4, they did a lot of sexual things in forests with me, as in sleeping with women as well, who would suddenly turn on me as well. I have those memories of the women who've been forced to do sex acts with them lying in the forest, and then they would suddenly turn on me. And this can also manifest in dolls. Like, I've seen children have dolls that are undressed, and they will form them into a sexual act, or hang them from a ceiling and open the legs, and another doll will be there, and things like that can happen. They're only 6 or 7, and they've had nothing open to them that a mother would know, sexualization. So always wondering where these things come from, and they haven't learnt it from anywhere that you know of. Yeah, same with dancing. I remember a child in my care, age 2 or 3, suddenly started to dance, and I remember thinking, I don't remember them ever being exposed to anything on TV even that was dancing, because that was something that I was programmed to think, well, let's do some dancing one day, but it hadn't happened up to then, and it was like, where did they learn that?
Yeah.
Things like that. But you don't hold on to these stream of thoughts, they're gone, which is how it's all set up.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Nellie. When you see young children, doing over sexualized behavior, it's the question of where did they learn that from? And obviously, our environment, the media, etc., is pretty saturated with that kind of thing. But then there's different levels of it, like you said, when there's like sexual provocation and sexual acts being reenacted. That should really become a big question mark. Where has that child seen this?
That's right. And also when I was 8, I remember I was quite precocious with a school teacher, the one that ended up taking us on the holiday. That was horrendous. But yeah, I remember going to school and having an apple for him and precociously putting the apple on his desk and things like that. I became a favourite of his, and there was always that underlying tension as well. So those kind of things could be set up as well, to look for if you're in a school environment and if you see this happening. If you're out of that loop that they normally have around these targets. This is a hard one. Bestiality things. I know when I was about 7, I was taken to a rural property with bulls and things like that. And after drinking milk, and all the men would arrive in the cars, and my father was there. After that, days after that, I always had like a red massive ring around my mouth. And I've seen that in other children as well. So this is one of the things that they put us through, is the bestiality. And also another thing, when I was brought back from Antarctica when I was around 9, my mother gave me a gift of chapstick. So chapstick was my gift for my mouth and my lips that were so brutalized by the weather in Antarctica, freezing cold. They would take us to hypothermia, the brink of it, and then bring us back, things like that. A lot of training goes on there as well, we did back then, because it was very cold. It makes you stay awake longer, so you can get more mileage time-wise out of you in an awake state. So yeah, unusual behaviour with teachers. Also, another thing is children will suddenly not want to play with a new toy or a toy because while the parents are asleep and the men are in the house, they will be doing threats and sexual acts and things like that with that toy. I can remember a blue metal police bike as well that was used on my younger siblings, brothers. Cause bruising around the genital area, and I've seen it used on other children in my care as well. So they'll bring toys in and attack the child with the toy and create really bad connotations with it, sexual threats, death threats as well, quite early on. I remember a little blue soft toy with a face, and it would light up blue, and it was called the death doll to another child. And the child was threatened and just refused to play with that toy. And this happened many times with other toys as well. So a child will suddenly go off a toy or not want the toy at all when they had previously wanted you to buy it for them or something like that. And then all of a sudden overnight, they can't stand for something that will give them a really sick feeling. I know this from experience. You don't want to look at it. And it's something you can't quite reach inside you, but you have an absolute body memory and sickness and tightness and ringing in your, wrenching in your stomach kind of feeling, and your throat and your head everywhere.
Just such an awful reminder to be around children as well. Like you said, they can't quite reach the trauma of what happens, but they've got this toy that has become a trigger for, you know, all this underlying that's in their room around them, and they've just got horrible feelings every time they see it. It's just so awful.
It's there, yeah. And many toys, not just one, it'll be many of them, be all of them eventually.
And to take away something that a child loves, right? Like that's the ultimate mind control.
The ultimate goal is to take away all of the joy. Yeah. Another sign is sitting in a chair and swinging your legs up. When you see a person, I used to do that when my father used to walk in the room. I would start swinging my legs up as a protection to stay away from me. Other children I've seen lie on their stomach because they can't sit down like I couldn't, and they will kick the backs of their legs up automatically, and you can't stop them from doing it, and they're doing it because of what they've been through, and it's an automatic response.
Trauma response. Yeah.
Also toys that they've told you that if you lose it, like my father gave me a green bouncy ball when I was about 8 or 9, and he showed me in the backyard how to bounce it really high, and it went into trees, and he'd go and get it, and he said, "No, you do it." And I did it, and it went into the trees. He said, "If you can't find it, we're going to kill you." So it will create that kind of fear with you. And then I was always obsessed with that ball. That ball ever went missing, I would have huge panic attacks, and things like that can happen. So a child can have an extreme reaction to losing a toy because it's been told to them that they're going to kill them if they use that toy. So it's always keeping you focused on something and busy and on edge and huge anxiety the time. So you present more as being anxious and maybe potentially having a mental condition that will eventually they'll get diagnosed through controlling the psychiatrists, which I'll get to later, how they do that. And then you're set up for more things later on in life with the potentiality to be locked up for things and all kinds of things, which is how they work. Also constipation from the drugging as well as the sodomy that we go through. And our inside's been absolutely wrecked from such a young age. That's also another sign. We'll get to mannerisms. Overly polite can be one. When it's around many other signs like I'm talking about, like these can always occur singularly in people and be fine, but with other things around it as well, like many things. And all these things that I'm mentioning I had as one person. Overly polite. I remember being sat in a high chair. I might have been about 3, and my father kept bringing my mother up to me and my twin brother, and we were taught with her Scottish accent to speak in a posh voice, so that if anybody saw or thought something, we were very well spoken and well bred and all that kind of thing, so that people would go, nah, can't be possible. You know, that's a good family kind of thing. There's another setups that they do. With adolescents, I think I've spoken before about the crazed eye look from the drugging and the shocks. A weird way of walking, like often if you're sodomized a lot, you might have a kind of up and down walk. And I remember that happened to one of my brothers, and then my father was out there trying to correct him to walk like John Wayne, more with a hip swagger to counteract that. So that was done in front of me so that I was aware of that. But then I've seen a video of me when I was about 20, my 20s, maybe 24. And I remember I was walking kind of like up and down in a weird way from the drugging that was in my system. So it was a kind of a strange walk when I was walking. Tired all the time. Often children that are really targeted. If they're not the golden child will get all the attention, be very engaging to people, and the other child, the beta or delta, will be head down, maybe eat a lot more food, comfort eat, because they're not getting the attention in the family or anything at all. Often a tremble on the head. I've put my hand on another child once, and his father was killed, I think 2 or 3 days after that by the organisation, and they had been taking him down into the garage with the father and telling them both what was going to happen, and he was also under electric shocks and had this tremble. And I've also felt it on animals like dogs. You can put your hand on them and you'll feel this tremble after electric shocks especially, and huge threats. And it's like a tiny little tremble. So I felt it before.
A nervous system response, I guess, just from being overloaded, right? Yeah, wow.
Yeah. Also coat hanger shoulders, like from the shocks and the stress that you're under. Often shoulders will be up like that.
Yeah.
My mother used to run her finger down my spine a lot too to make me put my shoulders back, which was a trigger. Also with the Great White Brotherhood, they did a connotation where my twin brother would pull what he termed his shark face, as in the great white sharks, as well, another connotation, and that would keep me in an altar.
Wow.
Yeah, often.
Trigger, yeah.
Or could switch me out of one into another one. Yeah. So he would pull his shark face, and this was also taught to another child to do as well around me. Also, a child might suddenly run into traffic because behind you and behind them are the handlers, and they've seen the handlers, you're not seeing them.
Yeah.
They're right behind you and menacing the child, and the child feels no way out but to run into traffic. And the amount of times my arm has suddenly shot out and pulled a child back out of traffic is, I wouldn't even be able to count. And the handlers were right behind us, menacing the child. I know my younger brother, one of my younger brothers, even was put in a harness, and my mother would walk him around the public in a harness, because he was doing that all the time. So the same was done to them. This is multi-generational.
Wow.
Yeah. Children acting robotic, on automatic, might say things that you haven't taught them, that you'll think, how did they know that? You never taught them that. They haven't learnt that anywhere else. This is even before preschool. They may not be talking very well either, especially after the leucotomy. One child, the golden child, will be set up so that the other child will be copying them, and there can be an age gap with that. Like the younger child might be the golden child, and the older child will be programmed to copy them and cling to them.
Wow.
In my case, it was my twin brother, who was always said to be a minute older than me, but I would always copy him, and this is no imagination either. We don't know how to play. So I would copy my twin and what he did and things like that. If I was allowed out at a kindergarten, things like that. Often the children will be glued together. They might be doing something like suddenly start to suck their thumb when they're 5 or 6, when they've never done it before, because that's been programmed. When they've seen an event, they'll give them the thumb to console them after a horrific event, and they'll start doing that. Parents might suddenly do an about face where they might be anti-guns, programmed to be anti-toy guns. My child will never own a gun. I'm never going to give my child a toy gun. And then overnight, that'll change. So there'll be a complete turnaround overnight. And all of a sudden, that child will be having multiple guns, toy guns, in their possession as a way of getting used to them. So it's all the psychology of it. This organisation is well versed in all child psychology, group psychology, adult psychology, friendships, things like that. Anything. They're extremely well studied in it. Appearance. So black eyes underneath, as well as huge black pupils, irises dilated, everything. So I remember I had black eyes when I was forced into a mirror. I've seen other children with black eyes. I've still got photos of that. Huge black eyes where the blackness takes up the whole iris. Hair change. Suddenly a child will have a different hair color, as I did. And I've seen other children go from having black, brown hair to being blonded for years after that. And I've seen the handlers in their bedroom, sitting them in a high chair with the bleach all over their hair. It's no words. And then all of a sudden you wake up the next day and you're programmed to think, oh, my child now has blonde hair, gone blonde. And then you'll get other people programmed, like the ex would be programmed to say, well, you know, she must have seen the milkman, or the postman came by, and things like that. So just ridiculous things, stupid. Hair's often thin, like mine, or missing from electric shocks. It can be lank at times when you're woken up after things and you think, why is my hair so lank and dead looking? So that can happen. Children are often underdressed for the weather out in public on events. So if you can see a child with other men around them, they'll often be dressed differently from the men who might be in warm clothes, and the child, like I was, often just in the barest of t-shirts and shorts in extreme weather. Yeah. I also have one eyebrow significantly higher than the other, from at times from the face being dropped on one side. So the whole face will go down, and then it'll tighten up again. But that will happen. So often I was programmed to see myself in the mirror, and my eyebrow would be significantly lower and my face would be dropped. And then there's a tightening effect as it comes back up afterwards.
Like a little stroke kind of thing on the face. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Also, I think I've mentioned the deep ridges in the back of the skull. And And another thing they do is they will put a ball, like a GIMP, in a child's mouth with the elastic creating like a Joker smile, because it's worn for weeks while they're under. And they're woken up with this, and they've got the ball in the mouth, and it's already hard enough to breathe through the nose when you're one of us, because of all the damage that they do to the nasal cavities and all the drugs coming out of your system and the congestion, and the nose just basically closes up and gets huge polyps and things that grow from all the drugging as well. Or the crusted scabs on elbows and knees that they do under certain programming that I had, and I've seen other children have, from the spinning and the electric cattle prodder on the elbows and the knees, that I've spoken about before. Another thing is that often you'll ask a child, don't they feel cold? And you don't feel cold. You don't feel the cold because you're so used to being in extreme situations for long periods of time, plus all the ice baths that they give us to keep us awake as well. So you're used to that coldness and things like that. I know that my younger brothers, and potentially me, but I have no memory of this. I know it was done to my younger brothers, so it could have been done to me, but I don't know. Those old Kelvinator fridges with the handle. My father used to get my little brothers to go into the fridge, and then he'd close them into it, and he'd stand me there to watch that happening and let them out after quite a while. And it was just, it's terrifying to have that done.
Of course.
Yeah. They would be extremely upset when they came out. They're still under drugging as well. The burns, often they will burn deltas down their chest or genitals, things like that, with boiling water, all sorts of different substances. I know I saw my father once when I was programmed to go into the bathroom coming out of the shower, and I did see little burns down his chest, and he was said to have worn a burn suit till he was about 9 or 11, and Auntie told me that when he pulled a electric jug kettle, so the story went, and anyway, he was burnt all the way down him to the point he had to wear a burn suit. And I've seen other mothers go through that too, like at my forced wedding. There was another mother there who felt great guilt because she was carrying, so the story went, a big pot of spaghetti, but I was only ever given these messages under while they were controlled to, and poured it all over her child, who was only about 13 months old. So the child was in the whole pot of boiling spaghetti went over the child on the floor in a burn suit. And mothers feel a lot of guilt about that, but it's not their fault. It was done to their children under scopolamine, put them under, do it, wake them up again, make them feel that they've done it, with the voices in the ears that they do. And they also use plastic surgery too on themselves. So I spoke about a brother Morris who was being imposter, who was impostering an actual brother Morris, and he had like a asymmetrical face. So they have the best plastic surgeons in the world, so they can create somebody to look like somebody that they're impostering as well as take signs of burns off them later on in life, things like that. So they can do that. They have the best access to the best plastic surgeons in the world that will do this and have no memory of doing it under scopolamine. Yeah.
Unreal.
Allergies, when there's no history, along with other signs. I can remember when I was about 3 or 4, my mother used to feed me and my twin brother out of a condensed milk can, and we would call it something ridiculous like la. And I remember once my mother had been feeding my twin brother, and then she rattled the tin with the spoon and said, "No, none for you." And I was starving. So it was always put that he was above me, right from very early on. Even when I was drugged and programmed performance enhancing drugs, age 3 or 4, to learn swimming in a pool, icy cold pool. And I would always beat my twin brother hands down, to the point that my father then changed it and gave me a really angry look, and then kept encouraging my brother, to the point that I knew that I wasn't allowed to try anymore. So he was the one that was able to beat me all the time, and the things that my father said to do with that as well at the time. So all of those kind of things. Also, I was given peeled an onion by my mother to be given when I was about 3 and I was starving. She just peeled an onion and gave it to me, and I ate it. Even ate it and pretended that I liked it to her, under programming, because we're so starving, you'll eat anything. Same with lemons at that age. So you become allergic to these kind of things later on in life, especially milk allergies from the condensed milk that was fed to us. So we'll have lots of allergies that then can be said to be an excuse for why we are the way we are, with all the drugging that they're putting into us as an excuse. So that's just a few signs that I've started with. I'll get to more later on as we go.
That's great. I think that's such a good overview of what people can look out for and just be aware maybe showing up in children around them.
I'm going to go back to a few more things that happened in my childhood that are relevant and will be relevant later. The first one I'm going to talk about is when I was 5 and I was moved to the place near the satanic killing field. And when we first moved in, it had, just before we had arrived, a great big corn had been planted there for a reason. And my father had brought me out there to watch him, and he was clearing and cutting down the corn, and he was talking about it as he did in his cryptic way. And he was saying corn has ears. These are called ears of corn. So standing there watching, always not knowing where he was going with anything. And he mentioned that there was a child and they were going to cut off her ear, but he wished it was me. So this was something that I was taken to about 12 years later, that I'll be getting to next session. So that was a slow, like you have a slow dawning when he would speak like this. You start to have a slow dawning about everything, and the horror just comes in pretty quickly over time at the end. And then he would stop as he cleared a little bit more before I went inside. And he'd look towards where the satanic killing field was, and say he was clearing the corn so that there would be a good sighting to this special place. And I was taken to that special place 2 years later for the first satanic killing ritual that I have mentioned in the past, to do with the boy from Maine in the USA. And he did have a name, and I know that name. Another thing that happened was I was taken just up the road. There was a single mother who had a son who maybe was almost 10. And my father had been visiting them quite some time, he said. He told me as he took me there, and they had triplets as well. And the father had just been killed not too long before that in a car accident coming home, which they had done. So she was a single mum, and the triplets were all girls. And my father was going into their house, but first he took me into the backyard, which was all overgrown, and took me into the shed where the boy was. And the boy was under scopolamine, and my father was chatting to him in his altar, and he was using one of those hot tools for jewelry, to weld jewelry. And my father was saying that this is going to be significant for me, and to have a conversation with him. So he was getting me around other people under scopolamine to have conversations, and for me to, this was my norm, people that were acting like this and talking and would go in and out of,
Conscious.
yeah. So that was my norm that I was being programmed to see. Another thing he would do is he would often call me names around my brothers to let me know that I was alone eventually, but I didn't really understand all that at the time. I just used to wonder why. And these names that he would call me were also, and other words that he would say, were also used in a lot of the killings that I was taken to, their murders. So it would keep me in that state of anxiety, in my altered states, different alters having connections with other alters kind of thing, to create those neuron connections back to that event eventually through this kind of type of programming that they were doing. So that was done a lot. Programmed a lot with books, like The Cat in the Hat. I think it was The Cat in the Hat Comes Back. And my father was very gleeful when he brought this through for me. And it had a lot of pink that had to be cleaned in it, from the cat eating cake. Ring in the bathtub that was pink, and then it went into the snow outside. It went through the house. It couldn't be cleaned up quick enough. It would always spread. And he linked this to me and my family members always cleaning up, always wearing the brunt of the blood that he had shed on the world, that I would never be able to clean it up. So that was another connotation that was used. And always a slow dawning. He would be talking to me about it. I would be happy at first because he was being nice to me and interested in the book that he was giving me and telling me about it. And then the slow dawning from what he would say would come in, and you just almost get it, and then you just go under again, maybe from the shock as well as the drugs. And basically he was saying I would spend my entire life and beyond never getting the pink stain off from what he was doing, that he didn't believe in the family unit. And we, the children, the children's children, the children's children's children, as he went on in his rant, would never be able to wipe the blood away from what he had done. So that's what The Cat in the Hat Came Back was signifying. And they would use many books like that in my life, like Chicken Lickin', The Sky is Falling Down. Later, he would have an egg saved for me, a few eggs. He saved them for a while, they were rotten. He got them out of his wardrobe when he pulled me into his room. This is when I was about 16, just before I left the family home. He said he'd saved them for me for a long, long time, and they had cracks in them, each egg. He came out with sleight of hand, exposed the eggs to me, he said he'd saved these for me and he had a present for me. And my heart leapt, oh, my father's been nice, he's got a present for me. And then he showed me the eggs, and I'm looking, and they've got black and green cracks around them. So he's got 3 of them. And eggs also has a connotation with birth, as well as tracking back to Chicken Lickin', The Sky is Falling Down. I'm about to be taken by age 16, by 17, to one of the worst things at that time, mass things that I was programmed to see and do, that I'll get to next session or the one after, Chernobyl. And basically he would save these eggs for me, and the year after, he actually forced me to eat those eggs, and I had huge salmonella poisoning for about 3 weeks. It almost killed me. So those eggs were truly rotten, disgusting. So that's kind of thing, like to put that into me as a future birth mother, the eggs and the connotation with birth, the sickness, the killing, everything that the anti-humanity that they stood for, all of that. Another one was Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So all the books had connotations for me. He was the lion, the good one, because they believe that what they're doing is good. They do in their psychotic way. That's how they talk, that they have that belief, and I've been told that. And I was the witch, of course. Another thing he would do is, when I had friends programmed to come over, especially in my primary school years, he would stand them in front of him and say over and over, what's your father's name? Because names were very important. They were always using names, certain names that I'll get to later on in my sessions that they would target that had different connotation meanings. Where does he live? So place was important, as well as they would often mix up a name and a place to have another connotation in their girls, in the cryptics that I'll get to later. What's your mother's name? What's your sister's name? It was always the name, the name, the name. Often these names were people that they would bring a person with the same name into my life to be a friend, and then they would kill that person. So I was often given a friendship with somebody, and that would happen. And one of them in the Cat in the Hat came back was Sally, and one of my first best friends in Australia that I was programmed to be with was Sally. And my father told me when I was 21 for my 21st that he was going to kill her, and they did a few years after that. Made it look like a heroin overdose, of course, which is what they do. It's quite easy.
No. So easy to make it look like a suicide or an overdose.
Yeah. And then songs as well, like one that was played quite often was a Johnny Cash song called A Boy Named Sue. And when I get to later on in this session, my first out there traffic name was Sue from Susie and the Banshees, spelt that way. Neil Diamond. Neil was another name that they use a lot, and Daniel, Neil, all sorts of names would have nonsense connotations that they would laugh about and things like that. And Diamond, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. I had a friend called Lucy at that time as well, who was a bit younger than me, so that was bringing that in as well, that connotation. So many connotations every time I was woken up to something. Another one was that song when I was about 11, I'm turning Japanese, and my father said, we're going to turn you Japanese. No, that's going to be another family member. We're going to turn you Chinese, but your such and such will be Japanese. And they programmed me to quite recently have a Chinese surname that had other connotations as well. So all these things were being set up many decades before, and this was told to me also in 2011 that that's the way they work. They will set things up centuries ahead now, he said.
It's just astonishing to look at the planning. It really is.
Even before someone's born, to give them that destiny that they're going to be named this name, because they will get into the parent's head. They'll wake up like I did suddenly and have names for children when I was allowed to have children, and things like that. Also, another song was The Yellow Submarine when I was 12. That would be sung constantly in my classroom with the teacher under programming, and it used to give me the big lump in my throat. As well as that song, I don't know who sang it, I Am a Rock, I Am an Island. Might have been Paul somebody, I'm not sure.
Is that the I'm a Walrus song?
Paul Simon song or something like that. I'm not too sure. And that would always give me the most isolating feeling. I am a rock, I am an island, basically telling me that I was alone, always going to be targeted, always alone. They were always taking friendship groups off me periods of time as punishment, and to make me feel that I was even more alone through schooling, which is what they do to so many children under these programs. Isolate them, make them look crazed. Future diagnoses happen, and then boom, they're in jail or they're locked up or they're dead. Yeah.
So true. They can't risk these children having a support system or for them to speak to friends about what's going on. So the isolation is such a key part of maintaining and developing that mind control.
So I'm going to continue now with age 16, which includes the trafficking. Firstly, my father used to walk me down the end of the driveway of the house and have conversations with me. One of these conversations that came up then and then later, especially 2011, was that he had studied under Anton LaVey, Satanist. My father is the head Satanist of this organization. He's fully into this kind of stuff, which I'll get more into in 2011. So he's the huge satanic element in it that kept it in. He said that he was in San Francisco for a long time, which is where LaVey was, and father used to always call me LaVey instead of Lovey. So he would turn me into him as well. All these connotations, it's just mind-boggling. And you've got to weed all these out. It's just, yeah. So he'd got him under scopolamine and learned a lot from him while he was in his 20s in San Francisco, where he was doing a lot of other things too. He was in Berkeley, the meeting of my mother, all of that stuff was going on as well. And then he also mentioned another time down the driveway that the head of the Mormon church was in town. This is my third town that I had lived in, so I'm about 16 here, and that he's the president, and he couldn't believe that he was here, even though they had programmed him to come there. Everything's done under program. They take control of all these other cults as well and bring them over, bring them around people, take them from one end of the world to another, wherever they want to take them, set up more, learn a lot off them. KKK was often mentioned as well, and that's also the KKK in the Hollywood that we're talking about too. I don't need to mention who those women are, KKK. So all these things are to create decoys and make people into something and not see what's really going on. So the head of the Mormon church is in town, he's saying. He can't believe he's here. Of course he could. He wanted me to come with him. He said, I want you to come with me. No, I don't. But then I was taken either that night or another night. I have a memory of a lot of men in robes and women, and a big event happening, a big room, and then I black out. So I have no more than that. It's just a very fleeting memory of something that went on that I was taken to. Behind our house at that time too, I was programmed and brought to the back of the fence where my father took me to see a lot of Mormons. He's saying, look, there's Mormons. And it was a lot of mainly women and a couple of boys, all in long dresses, bonnets even on their heads, bare feet, and dancing around and around and around like Ring of Rosies, looking really weird doing that. So that was like a set-up thing for me to see. They had brought that in for me to see. He also said things like he wanted one day, this is in 1997, which I'll get to one day, he wanted to be more notorious than Jack the Ripper, that Aleister Crowley was his idol, and that he had a deep love of Charlie Manson, which was another one of them. That was and this is going to be very hard for people to understand, but in 2011, he told me that that was one of his gods, things, one of his forebearers that he set up, and they all involved with this as well. Get a kid, get them on drugs, LSD, get a little cult happening. Very easy to get adolescents and early 20s people into this, especially through jails and that, get them out of jails, all sorts of things. They can go into any jail with scopolamine. I think I've mentioned that before, and I've been taken into these situations. I've seen it. Where they've got the screws and everybody under, having conversations with them, and like they're their best friends, and just walking in and out with me into jails. They can get anyone out of a jail for a while to do a crime and then put them back in, and then the person that they did the crime to can say, that was that person. Oh no, it can't be, he was in jail. It's like, yeah.
Unbelievable.
Dumping. Yeah. So he had a love of Charles Manson, who was one of their patsies. And they made it look so real, but my father said they almost came undone with that one. It was pretty touch and go.
Wow.
It was pretty close. So I had my sixth form certificate that I had been doing. And one of the things my father kept saying to me later was, you got 100% for maths, which I might have, but then everything got scaled down. But what he was referring to was accounting, because I had an accounting teacher. I'll call him HH. That was his initials. And what had been set up was my two younger brothers were skateboarding and went past his house down the hill on the skateboard, and he'd stuck his arm out, and one of my brothers had been flown into a telegraph pole. But he was under programming when he did that. And what he had done was he'd given me under programming a lower grade. And this all had relevance for me to be able to get into university. And my father made it look like he was going out to gun for me, going in to see him. I'm going to pay him a visit. He went into the school to try and sort it out. He said he was going to sort it out. This low grade that I had been given when I knew that I was the top of the class, under performance enhancing drugs, of course, and all that, and programming. I knew all the answers. It wasn't my brain. And so he was going in to sort it out, making it look like he was on my side. He wanted me to get into uni quite early. So I'm still 16 when I was enrolled in uni, because they were taking me then to huge stuff after that, after they had removed me from the family home. So he went in to see him. I don't know what happened. Next thing, I'm at a nightclub with my friends. I used to go to nightclubs a lot. My father had started that off, getting me to go out the window, like Neverland, Peter Pan, that kind of thing was always done. Younger in future generations, children. They had them going out the window quite young. And my recollection is that I was at this nightclub and my friend suddenly wanted to leave early. We just got there and I had to go, of course, because I wasn't going to stay there on my own. So these are all things that are set up. So I've gone with them, gone to one of my friends' homes. So there's two friends and they were talking about a Ouija board. And I was playing along. Yes, I know what one is. I didn't at that stage. I didn't know what a Ouija board was. Playing along that I knew what it was in that altar state. We'd had drinks at the nightclub under certain other things, all acceleration coming out. All of a sudden they decided to do a seance instead because she couldn't find her sister's Ouija board. And I'm thinking, what's going on? Not really wanting to do it. Because I'd had that thing with the devil on me, ripping into my soul. I didn't want to go there. They started doing this chanting and things and then said a trigger word to me. I don't know what it was. And I went into it with the drugging as well, started writing down this name of this teacher. And then we had a little fire burning it, drawing a picture of him burning it. Then all of a sudden, all this automatic wording came out of me that sounded like a devil's voice. I could hear it coming out of me and I didn't know where it was coming from. And they were looking at me like crazy because it was so vehement. And I remember just sitting there stunned afterwards thinking, where did that come from? It was all programming that had been done earlier on. This is how it works. And then after that, I suddenly said, I need to go home, because that was programmed. I needed to go home. On my way home, my father met me in the street. And I'm thinking, why is he here? He's saying, I'm just coming to meet you. And he's taken me to this teacher's house, which was around the corner from us. And I remember walking in and then I'm brought out again, standing in a bedroom. And there's him and his wife. And I remember him standing there. My father's doing something to him with electric shocks. And all of a sudden, he's just gone down. Then I have no memory, but being woken up a day or however many, I thought it was a day later, with my father at my room saying, your friend's on the phone. And my friend that was there at the seance had rung up saying that her mother was a cleaner for him and his wife and had found him dead. And I remember automatically, because I'd just been woken up under more drugging, laughing, like he wouldn't do that. I remember thinking, why am I laughing? And then I said to her, I know he's dead. And then I'm thinking, I don't know he's dead. How do I know he's dead? I have no memory of that, but these are all automatic responses. So this is how it works with some of the programming that we get, which is horrendous, because then I beat myself up about that. Then my friends treated me differently. I remember waking up and I was at their house not knowing how I got there. I didn't have my bicycle with me, have no memory of being taken there. I was sitting outside in the garden. I remember suddenly getting up and going to a fence and seeing a man in a black suit crouched down behind the fence. Looked at him, get away from him, gone back, and then it's gone again. And I remember clicking my throat. So a lot of the drugging had caused my throat to swell. And my friend was saying to me, "You're doing this," and she was showing me what I was doing. And I was constantly clicking the tongue to the back of my throat from the drugging.
Oh.
So these were also set up so that people would be alienated from me, friendship groups, in order for me to be moved on to more places. So I ended up getting my score reinstated. I got a letter apparently from the Prime Minister then, Robert Muldoon, who was Prime Minister then, wrote me a letter. Apparently my father showed me, kept it in his writing desk, so he said that I'd been given the right mark, that they'd done a recount. Then my father kept saying, "You got 100% for maths," which was, I got 100% on my program project to do the seance about the teacher, and then he was killed by my father. And then I remember my father waking me up in my bed, and he's talking to me, he's made me a Milo, sorry, and then he's woken me up and kept waking me up. And I'm so drugged, and he's talking about what he's done. And by him saying he was meaning me, that he had committed his first murder. Was it murder? Was it manslaughter? That the old fool, and he was using a lot of expletives, couldn't handle what he was doing to his wife. So I don't know whether they had made me do a sex act with the wife before that made him, my father was saying, made him die of shock, but it was a shock machine. So it was all this tangle of stuff that they would do. And that he'd met his maker. So my father kept saying a big thing, they would often say this, he'd met his maker, met God, their God, the one that gives the programs to the Trinity, that gives the programs to do all their killing sprees.
God, it's just so warped, isn't it?
It's so warped, yeah. My father would always jump up and down. And what springs to mind, or I may have been programmed this, is the Faust, F-A-U-S-T. It was a book, and it's like a cloven devil with cloven feet. My father would always look like that when he would jump up and down and like click his heels together, kind of thing, doing a boxing two-step as well after a killing. And it was like he was turning into some kind of weird Faust, like that.
Right. So it's like a bit of a goat demon.
The goat demon. Many children, when they are brought up, are given goat formula.
Wow.
Children, goat formula. So there's a big thing about the goat. My father would always recount the Billy Goat's Gruff nursery rhyme as well to me and my younger brother, and things like that. Crossing the bridge, and the goat was always down there, Billy Goat's Gruff, to get us if we ever tried to cross the bridge.
Of course.
Thing, like every nursery rhyme was.
Yeah. And there's the Satanists have just had such a fascination with the goat, like from Baphomet and, all the child sacrifice, like how interesting that, he was kind of taking on that energy.
He was, and it would fully come out after every murder that he was present at, that I was taken to. He wasn't present at all of them, but many of them, especially early on, and right up to when I was in my 40s. So I remember after this, I had a strong feeling that I was going to be murdered. I couldn't shake it. I didn't feel safe anywhere. So they'd stepped up the programming and the threats and the torture and everything. I went to a hairdresser and asked to have all the back of my hair shaved off, which was also like a Holocaust Jew thing to do that they were making me into. And it was dyed blood red, had to be blood red. I asked for blood red dye to be put in my hair, which it was. And I had like a blanket of fringe still over the front of my face. It was shaved at the back. And I had thoughts then that I wanted men to pay for what they'd done to me. So that was part of the rape programming. They will program you then to think, well, we're nothing now. I want men to pay for what they did. I hate men. All that kind of stuff started to be programmed in me as well. Also, I wanted to feel unattractive to men, which is why I thought I was getting my hair shaved off as well, to have that unattractiveness. It's all part of their programming. And then one morning I was woken up by my father, who said that my friends were here to see me, and I hadn't invited them over or anything. And two of them came in and said, we're going we woke up with a funny thing to do today. We both woke up with the same, we stayed overnight together, we both woke up with the same thoughts in our head of something fun to do. Come with us, come with us. They wouldn't tell me what it was. They said, we'll tell you when we're on the bikes on our way. On the way there, they said that they were going to go into the massage parlor. I went, oh no, how do I get out of this? And that they were going to play a joke. They were going to go in and enroll, because this is the way the organization will do it. They will get increments of things to get you going. Everything's done incrementally. So we were going to go in and it was going to be a big laugh. They were going to pretend to enroll and then just not. This is all, they were under programming. It wasn't their fault. And I was thinking, how do I get out of this? We got there, I didn't want to go in. They said, let's just do it. It's harmless, let's just go up. This is going to be fun. In the end, I rolled my eyes and thought, oh, well, what can happen? I was feeling really awkward. When I got in there, I started to look around. We were at the reception. There's two women there at reception. One had red hair. And they looked a bit bemused about, we were looking very unlikely candidates to be doing this, underage anyway. And they said to us, well, if you're serious, then give us your working names. And I just said my name at that stage. And they said, no, a working name. Is that your real name? And I remember looking around, and then one of my friends gave a name. And I remember looking around thinking, I know this place. I've been in here before, which I had. I've been taken there for many years, especially before Christmas and things like that. And all of a sudden, automatically, my hip, as it would, jolted out, and I suddenly said, Susie. She started to write down S-U-S-I-E, and I'm like, no, not spelt like that. S-I-O-U-X-S-I-E, which was from Susie and the Banshees, which I had been programmed as a music to happen. And then we got out of there, they were laughing, and I remember saying to them, I'm going to go back in. I'm still under something. I don't know what it was. Some cocktail, coercion as well, threats, all of that. So that's how it initiated. That's how they got me there.
And that was kind of bringing that part of your hidden life into your conscious memory, your conscious mind. Wow. All through your friends kind of luring you in there.
Luring.
Set up.
Yep. And this would happen all through my life. It was lure after lure after lure. Family members, friends were always set up to be the lure. Yeah, it's awful. It's awful to have friends for that purpose, but it's not their fault.
That's right.
Your brain can't beat the botanicals, basically. like the botanicals that they use are so potent, so strong. You can't stop hallucinations. You can't stop this when it's done like this. You're fully controlled. And I think this is what people need to understand. And it's so hidden. Governments hide this from people. They know that these organizations operate and they want to hide it. But by hiding it, we're heading towards something horrific, which is why I'm coming forward about this, because forewarned is better than no warning at all.
Yeah.
For people to be able to work out what to do. And I do have an idea down the track of what to do. I would like to petition the police and government one day to check for scopolamine and other drugs like that in autopsies. It can't be that difficult to do. I know that they do use masking products and all of that as well, but there has to be a way. And that's down the track. It's just some idea that I've had that could be something one day. Also, when I was in that massage parlor, I had a flash. This is where I belong, which was always said to me as well. You belong this, you are a whore, you're a prostitute, you belong in a brothel. All that pre-programming is all set up to come into something like this. And then there were other methods used as well when I was taken to another place after that I'll get to next session, and then another place when they removed me from that part of the world that I was living in and put me on a place further away. The same, to be hidden basically, while I was taken to other things. So yeah, I think I should talk now about some of my wellness and healing, so it's not all doom and gloom. Nature helps, sunshine when it's out, not today.
So true.
Time in the garden is really healing for me. Nice just to be able to go into a garden and not worry all the time, when are they going to come around the corner, when are they going to make an appearance, and start to relax into this new energy that I'm feeling. It's really beneficial. It's helping me reclaim some kind of spirituality as well, connection to earth as a start, connection to the botanicals around me, planting things that I'm doing, enjoying the garden, looking after it, doing my weaving in the garden. And one thing that I'm also bringing into my weaving as a healing is milkweed, which is what the monarch butterfly feeds on. And that's so healing for me, because I'm now nurturing, even though I was forced into being a monarch slave, I'm reclaiming the milkweed, which is what the monarchs feed on. And that is kind of like a spiritual thing for me as well, to reclaim part of me that was so hurt and abused. And so many people are also under these programs. But to go and reclaim something like that, and put it into a weave and use it for nurture and healing and the tactile and touch, is a kind of way of reclaiming your childhood that you never had, your inner people that they created that you still have to embrace, and you can.
That's so beautiful, Nellie. What a beautiful way to turn everything around through creating that goodness in your life.
Yeah, it does help. Even reclaiming baths, being able to have a bath. I had 2 in the last couple of weeks. Hard at first, but getting there. Only stayed in for a few minutes for the first one, but then managed to have a longer one the other day. Choosing who I have in my life as well is a real reclaiming. What I do with my time, volunteering in the community. Yeah, and sticking up for myself too. Like, I had a professional that I had allowed in and gave trust, who wrote a report. And I opened up and told her about the recent stalking that I'd had after building that trust for a while. And she has been in the mental health profession and worked at a place that I was sent to involuntarily as well. But I had allowed myself to engage her in some kind of trust because she was acting like I could trust her and wearing clothes that she said that she was wearing for me and all that kind of stuff. And I replied in an email to her because she wrote in her notes, Nellie feels that she was being stalked. And we know that this is just such a red flag.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't look good written on paper, guys. Nellie feels she was being stalked. Well, I know. We know we are. We know we've seen them before. We know their signals. We know their body language. We know how they operate. We've seen it. I've seen it for 50 years. We have that experience. And this is the thing. People in the mental health profession, they're not trained adequately. They don't have this experience. They don't have the understanding. You know, some people do, some gems do that are trained and have the life experience, but not all, especially the recent ones with the universities and everything. So I replied in an email and just set it out, and you have to, you know, because we don't just, you know, she also mentioned, why don't you go on this drug that they had put me on involuntarily for a little while, which is so toxic for you, when I had been explaining to her all the good superfoods that I'm putting into my body after a lifetime of drugging, most drugs put through my system that have wreaked so much havoc in my body and my mind. And she's come up with, oh, why don't you revisit that? Bomb me out and make me a zombie.
As if taking a tablet is a solution for trauma, right? Like
That's what they like to
just
do.
a Band-Aid.
Stick you in a corner and throw you a pill. When we know it's community, connections, connecting with ourselves, others, family members, repairing those bonds that these criminal organisations take off us. That's what gives us a life purpose.
That's it. It's not empowering taking a tablet, right? Like there's deeper work to be done.
It's going to shut us up and silence us.
Yeah.
Bomb us out. We know that.
Such an important point to make, Nellie, I think, for all survivors, is to not blindly follow what, you know, a professional, a mental health professional is recommending, because the truth is most of them don't have the life experience or the career experience to really unpack this level of complex trauma.
No, not this level, and not many levels at all.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say to survivors, just stick to your guns.
So true.
You know, and I'll end on with my favorite quote: transformation, not trigger, because that's what it's about. And when I'm really down, that's just the 3 words that come to my mind that really help me get through a day. So thank you.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing just another incredibly insightful interview again, Nellie, and for all your efforts to bring this truth to light. And we stand with you. It's so important that this information is going out, so survivors have it there to go to as they're healing, and also people learning about these cults actually have good quality information, you know, from a survivor who's well healed and has really broken through a lot of the mind control programming, so he can explain it succinctly. So thank you so much for all that you do.
Thank you, Gabby.